Good evening, good morning, wherever you may be in the diaspora. I am your Omiyika 7 coming to you from Omi's Production Studio. And as I indicated in the advertisement, uh, what would happen if you invoked the spirits and what could possibly happen? Well, I want to talk about that after doing my meditation and communing with the ancestors. Several nights ago, I had a visitation. And I knew it wasn't a dream because I woke up and I sat up in the bed. But I wanted to share this with you because it's very important to know what could possibly happen when you invoke the spirits. I had been invoking the spirits that evening, praying and calling on my ancestors. I had forgotten that in one of my particular shrines, I had removed an instrument, an instrument that was very close and dear to my uncle, and that was his harmonica. I had moved it because I didn't want the children to take it away and to play with it. And I had forgotten that I had moved it. But my ancestors reminded me that I had taken something from them. So that evening, as I put the harmonica away, later on that night, I had a visitation from three of my deceased loved ones. They all showed up, three of them, and they were traveling with a dog, with a dog that appeared to be a hunting dog. So when they came into my bedroom, they came in through the door. Two of them stayed back near the door, and my mother came forward closer to the bed. And as I woke up and I was startled, and she was standing there in this white dress that she had taken her last picture in. So I knew it was her because I remember the white lace dress she had on. I spoke to her as she was turning and walking away. I said, "Don't go, mother, come back." So she came back to the bed and she just stood there without saying a word or even communicating anything to me. But I knew that because my two uncles were with her, that they must have wanted something. And they were waiting patiently for her to come back to the door. So eventually she began to walk backwards and go back to the door with them, and they went out of the door. But prior to that, I had heard this scattering noise in my living room as if somebody was in there talking. So they must have showed up in the living room first over near the shrine where they discovered that the harmonica was missing. And that's when they came to confront me. They were literally confronting me. And I can't begin to tell you that, my uncle and my mother were very, very close. He was the only boy in the family, and he was very close to her because he made sure that after she made her transition that he spent a lot of time with us. Now, one of the things that I had been working on was looking into my mother's death. As a child, sometimes they'll tell you, "Oh, your mother just died suddenly," or "She died of a heart attack." And I knew at the age of 48, that was rather young. So I wanted to know what could have possibly brought this heart attack on. I started asking around the family about the heart attack that my mother had, and they all described it as some horrible situation that suddenly happened. It was an acute thing, wasn't a prolonged death. It was this acute, profusely throwing up and being rushed to the hospital. So I kept saying, usually when something happens where you are throwing up, that means that you've eaten something that didn't set well with your stomach or you become poisoned. So in my mind, the whole time that I was a young adult, I began to start this process of searching for my mother's death certificate to find out what was the cause of death and what did they put down. And something came to me in the spirit that said, no, she did not die of a heart attack. No, it wasn't a heart attack. It was something that she consumed. And it was something that in the last meal that she had that she consumed. So I started asking about her last meal that she was that she had consumed. And they kept telling me, oh, she must have eaten some cabbages out of a can and didn't sit right with her. But it was always something. And my brother and I continued to say that we were going to look, and I'm still looking now to find out, because I know my mother would wanted me to avenge her death, or to at least find out what caused her death. But I wanted to talk to you about your ability to channel your loved ones and ancestors, your ability to invoke them. And what does invoking mean? Invoking means that you're calling them to come forward and you want their spirit present. And I actually always go in and meditate in the room where I keep my mother's pictures, and I can invoke her at any time to feel her presence, even though I never knew her presence. But I want to say for the record that we as African Americans, we are able to channel. We are able to invoke someone's spirit. And that person can tell us things about ourselves and even about them. And I picked up on this as a young girl a long time ago by virtue of some of my older sisters who were into the spirit. And they never really came out and said that they were spiritual worshipers, but I knew from their ability to light candles. And when there was something going on in the family, that I could always see them light candles. And do you know that candles are very, very powerful? So I knew that they were invoking something. So, what I want to talk to you about today is to understand that spirits are capable of being invoked, and you can summon them there. And periodically, I would encourage you to invoke your loved one's spirit, to talk to them, to find out how they're doing, and can they help you? Can they come into your life and help you? But you really have to understand that we are spiritual beings, and when we take up a communion with God, we are doing this so that we can become like God. We take God into our spirit and we become one with God, and we begin to be able to learn the mind of God and be able to function in the manner that God would. And that's why we say we have Ori on our head, and that is God coming to consume us and be a part of us, and we cooperatively work together. And that's what we have to understand church is, that we become one with God. If you're not going to become one with God, you're wasting your time with church, because you are the living epistle, you're the temple. And God wants to know experience, because he's a spiritual almighty God. He cannot know experience except through you. And when he consumes you, he, she, or it can begin to know what experience is. Now, not saying that God can't do all things, because he cannot come down here to earth. So that is definitely a definite that he cannot do. He cannot come down here and take control of your life, because he's giving you dominion. So therefore, there are some things that God cannot do, but he wants to know experience through each of us. And each of us have the capability of allowing God to reside in us. That's why we can become gods. And let me also say that we are coming up on a time when we are going to know ourselves more spiritual than we ever have before. And we're going to get an understanding that we can be like God and we can do the things that God has done. Now, not that I'm blaspheming, but I'm just saying to you that we got to come out of this whole notion of church. We are the living epistle, we're the temple, and church is going to reside within us. And we're going to be living, walking epistles. And we're not going to have any need for any formal building, brick and mortar building. The brick and mortar building is going to be outside of ourselves, and we're going to need to be able to have the ability to be clairvoyant, clear audio, where we can hear things, clear vision, and we're going to be able to see things and spiritually see things. A lot of us don't understand that we can go into a trance, and that trance will allow us to remove ourselves from the present things and the environment. But being able to go into a trance is a good thing. Sometimes it protects you and helps you and prevents you from being harmed. So there's going to be a lot of supernatural things that we as an individual are going to be capable of doing. And we don't have to be special people. We don't have to be chosen people because God has chosen all of us to give us a measure of His Spirit and give us a measure of His essence. So we all have this capability, and you're not special, and God is not a respecter of person. So He's given all of us a bit of His essence. So as we get to know this and understand dreams, like periodically when you have a dream, write it down, jot it down, be able to go back to it and determine what it means. Now I'm still working on figuring out exactly what that visitation was about with my mother and two uncles. I know that I was very close to both my uncles, and they spent a lot of time telling me that I was a Geechee backwater girl and that I came from the Geechees. And uh, they spent a lot of time trying to explain to me how the Native Americans became interwoven with the slaves and how the Seminole Indians were just simply runaway slaves who came to live with the Geechees and the Gullah people. So, and I kept saying North Carolina before, but all of this occurred in South Carolina where they had to pick the rice in the swamps that was in South Carolina. So making a correction on that. Some of my other speeches talks about North Carolina because my grandmother was from North Carolina and I kept getting that confused and I meant to say South Carolina as a correction. But African Americans, we are going to have to understand that we are genteel people. We are very unique people. And we came here with capability of being able to grow into grace. And that means that you might not be spiritually where you want to be now, but you are on your way to growing in grace and being able to utilize your bodies and go on the inside of you to find and figure out problems and solutions. Now, that problem that I posed to you about not knowing how my mother made her transition is going to plague me for a while until I start doing more research and digging into it. And I know she wants me to avenge her death and to talk about how she actually really did die. So I know it's a mystery because in my mind it keeps saying, no, that was not the way she died. Figure out how she made her transition. And it sounded like it was poison to me rather than just a natural death because she had had no prior heart conditions or no strokes or anything. It was just a sudden thing where she went to the hospital and then they announced that she had died because apparently they said a heart attack. But a heart attack and having a digestive problem, the two don't mix to me. They're just two opposite of each other. Now, as I was explaining to you that periodically you need to set up your altar and you need to have your altar, you go in and ground it on the floor if you have it on the floor. Now, I'm going to be offering this January an actual communing with the sweet spirits and teaching people how to pour their libation, how to dedicate their children, and also teaching them about libation. What is the purpose of pouring libation, and why do we remember the ancestors? It is up to the living to stay in touch with the dead. So why do we talk about the dead, and how are we going to maintain our dead and remember them? So this January, I will be teaching a subject on that so that we can literally know what to do when we set up our altars and why do we have to have an altar and why is it necessary to go to your altar to talk to your loved ones who made their transition, and have they really left you? Are they still here able to connect with you? Yes, they can connect with you and you can summons them. So it's very vital that you spend time doing that. Now, the other thing that in this workshop that I'm going to be offering, this workshop will be able to be had through signing up for a membership through an agency. And once you sign up with that agency, you can attend my workshops that I'm going to be giving periodically throughout the year. I will have more information on that, but you have to be a member in order to attend this particular series of workshops. So, for the benefit of the people that want to know more about spiritual life, I want to say that I don't do oracle divinations for people. I show you how to do your own. And I try to make you more aware of the fact that each one of us have been called to be evangelists, and you can all become your own readers, and you can read for yourself the oracles. And there's a lot of things you can read in the mediums of the ripples and the waves of the water. So you can learn about the different methodologies, and you won't have to go running behind somebody, ask them to do a yes or no oracle reading for you. You can do it yourself. And what I wanted to say is that I will be from time to time doing the Blog Talk Radio show with Oracle Divination Network. That is a network where you can sign up if you are a priest, priestesses, Baba Law, a Pektibi, Iyanafai, and a devotee. Somebody that's devoted their life to communing with ancestors. So we want to honor you and let you know that we do have a network, and we urge you to join our network, to sign up, giving you your name and credentials, how you can be reached in the event that you're giving readings and you are a practitioner. Being a practitioner means that you have to go to training. So we do have preparatory practitioners training now. This is not to be a priest or priestess. This is preparation for priesthood. This is laying the foundation. I cannot make you a priest or priestess. You need to be going through training with the Bible law or an Yalify or a Petaby. But I'm giving you the preparation and skills. This class is going to be online that you can enroll in. One of the first classes is free, and thereafter the other preparatory classes is for a small fee. Now, in this class, I'll be giving you materials. You will have a whole host of materials that you can download. You will also be doing independent work online, and then we will have a course where it will be a professor-driven class. I'm not sure if it's going to be one night a week, 2 nights a week, but you'll have access to the professor where we can come in and work with you to do your hands-on demonstration. So I want you to watch for this class and make sure that you can be a part of it. Now, getting back to dreams, we talked about how necessary it was to pursue your dreams, write your dreams down, and then look them up and see what those symbols means, because a lot of times dreams come in symbols, and you want to understand, what does that dream mean? What was it trying to tell me? So dreams are very important. And a lot of people, they don't think that they're important enough to write them down, but you should write them down. And you should get to the point where you understand that dreams can be sending you messages, and dreams can be indicating to you about what's going on in your life and what you have to attend to. But you just can't ignore dreams, because sometimes they'll come back again and again until you take note of what it is that they're trying to tell you. So I want you to be very mindful of the fact that you don't have to be a priest or priestess to interpret your own dreams, and you don't have to be a special godly woman or man to have dreams. We all have dreams, and dreams come in a message to tell us something. And sometimes it alerts us, and sometimes it startles us, and sometimes it reminds us that it's things that we're supposed to be doing. But we cannot just ignore that we have dreams, because dreams are gateways or windows into our life to tell us what is going on or what is about to transpire. So it's almost like the spirit, it doesn't let anything slip upon you. It will bring and cause things to come to your remembrance and show you things, so that at all times uh, you're not, it's not guesswork, it's work that you are being told in advance so you get yourself ready. So once again, I want you to understand dreams are very important and you need to take heed to them. Keep a dream log of the things you dream about, and especially if you have visitations like myself. The visitations that I had of my mother and her and my two uncles, they were coming to tell me something. But even though there was silence and there was no talking, they still came to tell me something and to speak to me and to let me know that there was something that I needed to know. So I'm still interpreting my mother's visitation to my room, and I don't want you to be afraid or frightened if your loved ones come back to visit you. I want you to try to figure out what it is they want or what are they trying to tell you, and stay connected to that dream and stay uh, forevermore trying to decipher what it is they're trying to tell you. And also, once again, the classes, the preparatory classes that we're going to be offering will be preparatory classes getting you ready for the priesthood, seeing if you have a destiny and has anyone called you to your destiny to be a part of this particular dream. And if so, hold up. Okay, have a little microwave situation over here. So now we got that under control. We're back. Thank you so much for joining me, ladies and gentlemen. You've got your Omi Inca 7, and I am tuning in from Omi's production studio. And I'd like to welcome each and every one of you. And if I do have any guests down here, let me say hello to my guests. Let's see something. What's it say? It's saying, oh, here we go. Hello. Okay, let's see. Okay. I did put a little emoji out here to say hello and a little happy face. Maybe they'll say something. I don't know. Okay. All right. Now, once again, I am Omiyuka 7, live coming to you from Omi's production studio, and we've been talking about dreams and visitations from your loved ones, and how do you perceive your visitations? Should you be frightened? Should you be afraid? Or should you talk to those beings that come to your bedside or to your room? Well, I suggest you talk to them. Find out what it is they want. I didn't quite understand why my mother was visiting me at first until I went and looked back on my altar and I realized I had shuffled some things around and had moved my uncle's harmonica and it was no longer there. And he wanted it back. And he was here to tell me he wanted the harmonica back. So I gave it back to them. And when I gave it back to them, I noticed the next day I didn't have that dream anymore and they didn't come to visit me anymore. So and you got to give the people what they want. If it's something that you've taken off your altar that ordinarily has been sitting there for years, you should give it back to them because they're going to hunt you until you have a confrontation with them. So I do believe in spirits, and I do believe you can communicate with them. And I do believe periodically you should call their names and acknowledge them. So I'm on today to talk to you about a little bit about what would happen if you invoke your spirit, your spirits, or the family spirits. I would imagine that they would come and they would talk to you. That's what would happen if you invoke them. They would politely come and see what it is you want. Maybe my mom was coming to see what I want because I was invoking her spirit, and she wanted to know what it was that I wanted. And in the meantime, they wanted their harmonica back because they brought a dog with them because they was going hunting. Looking, that dog symbolized that they were going hunting. They were looking for something. So that's how I perceived that dog, that hunting dog, that hound dog, that they were looking for something, and they felt that had taken that harmonica from them and they wanted it back. So don't think all this to be strange. This is part of the scheme of things. They still have energy and require food and water for energy if they're going to do work for you. So that is why you leave them to play the fool, because they need energy and they're tired and they need that energy. So, are there any listening people in the audience? If there is, let me see here. Okay, I don't see anybody out here. Okay, nobody's saying anything back. This is kind of interesting. I don't see anybody saying anything, so if they do pop up there, I'll let them know that I'm in the room. Once again, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I'm talking about um, what would happen if you invoke the spirits of your ancestors, and when they do come, what will you tell them, or how will you work with them? You just treat them like any other living being. They're just frequency and energy, and that's all that you are as well. And except for you have a spirit to carry you, whereas they are lacking the spirit. The spirit has gone out of their particular body. They're just frequency and energy. So it's very vital that we understand that we are going to have to work on our altar. We have to work with uh, things on our altar, like our water and our flowers. Those are the things that our ancestors need to grow and to develop. And then the energy of the food that you place on your altar is something they need to grow as well and become strengthened to do the work for you. So I am going to bid you farewell, and thank you so much for tuning in to me today and listening to my story about my visitation from my ancestors. Have a great day.